The story is seen from the point of view of Greet, who is a young girl who goes to work as a servant in the household of someone who we now know to be the greatest painter of their generation, if not any generation. And it's a story of how this girl discovers herself, how it's a rites of passage, I suppose. And seen from the other side, it's the story of an artist who becomes obsessed by a young woman and how a painting is created as a result of that obsession. I think the notion of obsession is very interesting. It's something that film deals with very well. I think that the act of artistic creation is something that's interesting to make a film about. The interface of art and money, which this is about, the way that the patron interacts with the artist, the problems that beset a marriage. It seemed to me to touch on a number of areas that I was interested in: sex, money, and obsession. So, if you can't make a good film out of that, what can you? I think he had an enormously difficult job because, for a start, he's playing a very famous painter. It's difficult, it's intimidating. You have to be very careful that you don't end up doing some kind of strange impersonation of what you think an artistic genius might be like. You have to personify. In this instance, Vermeer is probably one of the more mysterious painters from art history. There's no known portrait of him. The one portrait that's posited is actually a painting that he did, and you see the back of his head. That's the kind of character he is. He's someone who seems to be absent from it. There's something really mysterious about the work he produces and the man himself. There's very, very few facts that are known. Most of those that are known were incorporated in Tracy's novel. The rest are her imagining. So he had to find a way of being both human and enigmatic at the same time. I think it's an extraordinarily difficult challenge, as well as being able to hold himself like an artist, know how to hold his paintbrush, all that stuff that needs to feel second nature. I found her captivating the minute that I met her. What was more interesting and more tricky in a way, because she's so fast and witty and irreverent and energetic, and the first time we met her, she was rushing around, and we were in New York, and she came in to meet us for a drink, and rushing around and had this incredible energy, and I couldn't stop looking at her and listening to her. And it was just the jump of thinking, well, can she be this very quiet, very intense, and 17th century, more to the point, girl who grows into a woman over the course of the film? Can she be that person, or can she only work in a contemporary setting? So we read her, and for me, she was head and shoulders above everyone else. And as I said, there's some very, very fine young actresses there. And I think it's partly because she's so full of this energy, so full of life, that putting her into this costume and repressing her meant there was something very interesting going on, very interesting for me anyway to look at. And unless you're fascinated by her, then the film's not going to work. She wrote me a very nice note. I think on the first day of shooting, she said, it's your baby now, look after it. So, which I think, the balance there was right, in that she's handing over responsibility, but saying be careful. And it is, I've not adapted anything beforehand. I mean, the films I've made beforehand have been from original scripts, or they've been documentaries or whatever, so I've not really worked from a novel or an original source in this way. And there is a responsibility, and there's even more of a responsibility because every woman I met, it would appear, has read this book. So few people I've met haven't. And you realise, the more that I met, the more I realised, oh my God, they've all made the film in their heads, because that's what you do when you read a book. You're directing the movie in your head. And here I am coming up with my interpretation, the way I see the girl, the way I see Vermeer, the way I see that, this room should look, or that canal should look. And you realise that you could really come a cropper. It's a scary thing. It's quite a scary thing. And all you can do is, close your eyes, hold your nose and jump in, really, and hope that you do it justice. We had to find a way of making Vermeer's studio feel special. It's really, a lot of the story is built around the fact that this girl is able to get into Vermeer's world. And his world essentially is this studio and the attic upstairs. And they had to feel like very different spaces to the rest of the house. And there's such a wealth of other fantastic genre paintings and genre painters from that era that you don't just have to stay with Vermeer. So what we really did was come up with a worldview where anything that felt really Vermeer-like had to happen within the studio. I mean, Eduardo, our DOP, our cameraman, came up with a lighting scheme that really reserved the Vermeer light for the Vermeer studio. And we were very keen to get in some of the feel of other Dutch painters, because Vermeer's very particular, it's very quiet, it's very singular. So we were looking at, I won't bother listing, because I know they'll all be cut out if I list all of the painters, but we were looking at a number of other painters of Dutch interiors or Dutch genre painters. And I really wanted to try and create a world that felt a bit busier, a bit noisier, a bit dirtier than Vermeer's world, so that one could feel the way that he would take his raw material and do something special with it. I mean, it was very exciting to actually be able to go and spend a day shooting in Delft Town Square, to get the crane out and pack that square full of extras, and recreate really what the city might have been like in the period that it was there. I mean, this was the city that Vermeer was born in, that he died in. He grew up in a pub on the corner, just around the corner from where we were filming. We also went out to a village in Belgium called Damme, which is built around the same period. These are for the scenes where Peter and Greet walk in the countryside.